Hello, and thank you for listening. My name is Luke Mardigian, and you are listening to Be Insured, where we talk about business, leadership, and insurance. That way, on your worst day, when you need it the most, you will be insured. Before we dive into today's topic, I want to tell you about a phenomenal resource we created just for you called the Ultimate Commercial Insurance Guide. This guide breaks down the 4 major things every business owner must look out for in order to save money and ensure their company is protected. You can get your hands on this guide right now by heading to beinsuredonline.com. That's beinsuredonline.com. So, listeners, have you ever been speaking in front of a room and getting a lot of blank faces staring back at you? Or even worse, in your team meeting, and you have blank faces staring back at you? Well, being able to command a room or just even an everyday conversation is necessary skill for every business leader. It's so frustrating when you feel like the lack of confidence and skill set you need to inspire others to action is not there. So we want to give you that today. And I'm always excited to be joined by a co-host,
Megan Vermillion.
And we are so lucky to be joined by today's guest expert, Vinh Giang, who is an entrepreneur, motivational speaker, magician, and master at communication. Vinh, thank you so much for being on the show today.
No worries, Luke. Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it.
My first exposure to you was at the Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan convention, where you just absolutely crushed it. You inspired my wife so much she came back, quit her job, and started a business.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. She had plans, and then she heard you made a comment, something along the lines of, you are the sum of the 5 closest people to you. And,
yes.
And she said, I'm spending way too much time around people at my current job. I need to get with entrepreneurs and get rolling. So thank you so much for being on.
No worries, man. I thought you for a second there about to say, yeah, my wife left after that. She didn't want to spend time with me anymore.
does take some motivation for that to happen too.
Oh gosh.
So, give us a little more background on yourself, Vinh. The magic stuff is just fascinating, and how you wrap it into keynote speaking, and now you hold workshops for folks who want to get their story down and get their voice. How did you get here?
Yeah, look, I followed a very traditional path when I started my kind of life. I studied commerce and law, and then I dropped out of that to build an online business teaching magic tricks. And when I was teaching magicians online, the area I spent the most time focusing on was showmanship. And showmanship is just really a fancy word for communication skills. Because what I realized was in the world of magic, all magicians were learning technical sleight of hand, and they were learning how to get really good technically. But what they weren't spending any time on is their ability to communicate. And the problem is you can be a 10 out of 10 technically, but if your ability to communicate is a 2 out of 10, the question is, do you think people perceive you to be a 10 out of 10 or 2 out of 10? And the reality is you're only as good as you can communicate. So I realized that there was an opportunity to teach, fellow magicians the value of showmanship. So that's what I focused on. And then that kind of slowly bled over to the professional world. And I was no longer just teaching magicians. I started to teach professionals from all different industries how to improve their communication skills to help them become visible. Because a lot of the times those people who are technically brilliant, sometimes they're invisible because of their inability to communicate effectively. And it's a skill. It's something everyone can learn.
Yeah, that was, I think you gifted everyone at the convention access to your online kind of base camp for speaking. And one of the things I took away from it was that our voice is an instrument, and it can be tuned and developed and trained. And I think so many people think, he's just a natural charismatic speaker. That's just how he is.
That's right.
I'm not that way. And I think you've just blown the doors off that concept.
Well, when I run my workshops, Luke, I generally show a video of me about 7 years ago, actually 6.5 years ago. And when people see that video, it freaks them out. I believe 6 years ago, I still had a lot of value to offer the world, but it was just my inability to again, communicate and play my instrument well caused people to think, this person has no value. I'm not going to trust this person, because through voice, people will make a decision whether you're friendly or not, whether you're trustworthy, whether you're an expert, whether you're intelligent, whether you're successful. The list goes on, and all of that just comes through your voice. And the biggest thing that kind of it blows another door open is that in business, we understand that people buy from people, and your voice, it literally is your personality. people make assumptions about who you are as a person through your voice. It's crazy. So again, it's something we should work on so that we're portraying the values and the traits that we want to portray.
Right. And I think a lot of people would feel like, well, I'm being fake or I'm being, disingenuine to have that tone of voice because I normally speak like this. But really it's helping people get out of the way of their own preconceived notions of you and actually hear what you're trying to communicate of value.
Well, let's address that for a second. The fake and phony thing is something that comes up every workshop that I do. And this is what I want to share with people, just to relax their minds. It's not fake and phony because of this. There are 80, think of this metaphor. There are 88 keys on a piano, and right now you're just very used to playing 12 keys on your voice. And when you try different things with your voice, it's still your voice. It's just keys that you're unfamiliar with. So it's not that it's fake or phony, you're just unfamiliar. And to me, learning how to play the entire instrument, there's nothing fake or phony about that. That is the most authentic thing you can do, is to learn how to play your entire piano. Whereas again, most people, let's say for example, I was only comfortable here and I would only play here my entire life. I can play up here too. I can play even higher. But again, it's still my voice. It's still my voice. There's nothing fake and phony. If you can make that sound with your voice, it's your voice. So I think you've got to get that out of your head. It's not fake and phony, because that's the number one reason why people won't try to play with their voice in a different way.
So really it's going from chopsticks to Beethoven.
Yeah, and the reality is, you said before, have you ever given a speech where there's a lot of blank faces? A lot of the times we spend so much time on content, and the content is beautiful. The music that's on the sheet is beautiful. But often all of that beauty is lost because we don't spend any time thinking about how we're going to play it. So to me, you can take the most beautiful pieces of music and play it poorly, and there'll be blank faces.
Yeah, and I think that leads me into my next question, which is, what are the common mistakes that you see people make when it comes to communication? We just covered one of them is I feel disingenuous if I'm communicating outside of my normal octave range. What else do you see?
Another big one is what we call auditory clutter. And auditory clutter is the ums, the ahs. When people have a lot of ums and ahs and sounds that they make, that is one of the biggest things that takes away from your authority, takes away from people seeing you as an expert, and people lose confidence in you. Because again, when you have too many ums and ahs, it clutters the clarity of your message. So it decreases the clarity. So
how can you fix that? How do you make it, come off better?
So one of the most powerful techniques is, first of all, you need to bring awareness. And a really powerful technique is the following. So get your phone out, put it in selfie mode, and then film yourself speaking nonstop for 5 minutes at least. And just talk about your day. If you don't know what to talk about, just talk about your day. And then leave that video for about a day. Don't watch it straight away, because we're too damn critical of ourselves. And then the next day, when you watch it back very specifically in this particular way. The first time you watch it, turn up the sound to maximum, and then turn your phone over so you can't see yourself. So just listen to it auditory-wise. And then now start building awareness and take notes. What are your filler words? What are the sounds you make, the ums or the ahs? Write them down. First, bring awareness. What are they? Do I use the word and, or do you know what I mean, or so? Do I use those quite often? Make notes of them. And now you bring self-awareness to what your non-words and your filler words are. Then after that, because we don't only want to get rid of the auditory clutter, we want to get rid of the visual clutter. So then watch yourself after that, turn down the sound and just watch yourself on mute. And then take notes. Are you doing things with your hands? Do you keep touching your glasses? Do you keep touching your chin? Do you fold your arms? What do you do? What's some of the visual clutter we can start to minimize? And when you minimize the auditory and visual clutter, that cleans up your communication. That alone will improve the way you come across dramatically.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So what's the key to winning over a room, a client, or even your team? How can someone communicate with power and influence?
Storytelling.
Yes.
Storytelling is, and the biggest thing I'll say with storytelling is you've just got to collect them. And the power of a humorous story is underrated. Right. So let me give you an example. So, and to say that I'm going to give you an example of something humorous is always dangerous. But like I've got a son. He's 2.5 now, and I remember before when my son was born, we were thinking of a name, and we came up with a name. It was Axel. We thought, oh, this is such a great name. And then we checked with my father-in-law, who's from Malaysia, and we flew there. We asked, hey, Dad, we've got a name. What do you think? And the name is Axel, and he thinks for a second, and he's got a bit of an accent. So he's like, okay, not bad. And he goes, how do I say it? I'm like, oh, it's Axel. And he goes, oh, okay, the X-hole. No, no, the asshole. And so we didn't name him asshole. we named my son Xander instead.
Aw,
but you
that's
see,
cute.
That's a 45-second story, and I've used it before to open a speech I'm giving for a small room. I've used it to open a boardroom meeting. So I've got a collection of 30 of these little stories that happened to me through my life, and I begin meetings with these. You know, I've started a 4,000-person room with this story because what a story does is it humanizes you, especially if it's humorous. And humor creates connection. It breaks down that massive ice wall, and even for your audience who are sometimes you might be sitting across from a client. This story will break the ice, it builds trust, and it enhances connection. And funny things happen to all of you all your lives. It's just that you forget them because you don't document them.
Do you have some type of system to document things that happen, or do you just kind of work doubly to pay attention?
No, I do. I do. So essentially, I follow a very simple storytelling structure. So when something funny happens, I immediately record down the incident, which the incident includes who, what, where, and when. And also in the incident is what are some of the key lines that people said that I found hilarious, and I'd note those things down. So that's essentially all I capture: who, what, where, when, and what was said. And that I've got a folder, and I just call it a story bank. And anytime anything emotionally moves me, whether it's humor-wise, whether it's emotional, whether it's anger, I take a note. And I've now got a story bank of just over 1,000 different types of stories, and I label them. Something that was out of anger, something that inspired me, something that made me sad. And this is one of the most powerful tools that no longer makes me fear speaking. Because anytime someone wants me to speak, I'll go, oh, I've got a bank of stories. I just dive into that bank. And when you realize the power of storytelling, you start to become a bit of an addict for collecting them.
I could imagine so. I mean, everyone sits down as soon as you pull out a book and say, all right, kids, story time.
Absolutely.
It's built into us.
You've got to be a good storyteller because, I had uncles who did that, and I'll be like, no, get away from me.
Not that uncle.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite parts of seeing you speak was your use of magic to teach about the power of perspective. I couldn't think of a better way to give an example of how perspective changes everything than your way that you exhibit it during your keynotes using magic. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, look, well, to me, the whole reason why I use magic in my presentations is because I believe in making the medicine taste good. my wife's a pharmacist, so it's got to make sense. But and the reason is because I believe you've got to make learning fun. And when you make learning fun, it sticks. Whereas often as adults, we forget to make learning fun. And to me, now that I teach communication or I speak on stages, I have that as a core pillar of mine. Is you've got to make the medicine taste good, whether it's through magic or it's through the use of humor or storytelling. You've got to make it fun. I think as adults, we've stripped ourselves of fun, and as adults, I've got to be serious all the time. And I think that's a fundamental flaw in life. I think we've got to have fun.
Especially,
that's why I do it.
Especially in corporate meetings, like boring insurance companies where everybody's wearing a suit and tie, right? Even more.
No, you're not the most boring bunch. Don't worry, I've met worse.
Yeah, our company's not too bad. So before we close out the show, if our listeners could take one thing away from today's conversation, what would you want them to remember?
You've all got a beautiful instrument. Learn how to play with it. It's one of the most powerful instruments in the world, and it can be all summed up in one quote, and it's that it takes one voice at the right pitch to start an avalanche. So think about it. Whether it's a movement, whether it's changing your family, changing your business, you have an incredibly powerful tool to use. And, don't wait to the end of your life to realize, oh, crap, I didn't play any beautiful songs. Play beautiful songs and die completely empty. That's what I say.
Oh, that's a great way of putting that. I love that. So, Vin, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people connect with you?
Just check me out on Facebook. So just facebook.com/askvin, ASKVINH. You'll find me there.
All right. Thank you so much. And everyone can stay in touch with us. Following the Mardigian Agency on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks. And we'll see you next time on Be Insured.